actually avoid lying this time. A review out the day I said it would be out. So Jason Bourne is the fifth entry in the Bourne film franchise, which is adapted from the characters in the novels written by Robert Ludlum, and the direct sequel to the Bourne Ultimatum. As Ludlum passed away in the early 2000s, this is another entry that is actually an original story and not adapted from one of his novels from the 80s and 90s. After the Bourne Ultimatum, Damon reportedly said that he was not going to come back to play the character of Jason Bourne unless Paul Greengrass was involved again with a story that was worth telling. So here we are, almost a decade later, with Greengrass back at the helm as director, co-writer, and producer, and, thankfully, another Matt Damon-led Bourne film. Jason Bourne finds the eponymous character of off the grid yet again, trying to find some sort of way of life away from everything he once knew at the agency. Nikki Parsons, who has also been living seemingly off the grid herself, brings Bourne back into play when she hacks into the agency, discovering a new ops program and more information on Bourne's past, which is the part that keeps Bourne interested, which in turn brings the CIA back onto their heels, leading into a brand new Bourne adventure. I'm actually quite surprised right now at the lukewarm reviews for this film. I certainly agree that while the film can't quite live up to the incredibly high expectations set by the original trilogy, a trilogy that I firmly believe gave us three of the best action thrillers of all time, culminating in one of my very favorite action films ever with The Bourne Ultimatum. Yet I believe this new entry in the franchise definitely stands head and shoulders above many of the very poor to average action thriller films that we see typically flooding theaters every year. This film stands strong on its own merit within the Bourne formula by continuing to provide fans with the always riveting character of Jason Bourne, spectacular and mind-blowing car chases, and it's obvious why the budget was upped an extra $10 million since the Bourne Ultimatum, well-choreographed hand-to-hand fight sequences, practical effects with limited special effects, which keep the film grounded within realism, visceral and rapid editing with multiple camera angles that keeps the film's pace very brisk, and the addition of two new characters portrayed by Alicia Vikander and Tommy Lee Jones. And Alicia Vikander is one of the best new characters in this film and is one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much. It's likely there will be a sequel, and I can't wait to see more of her eager and formidable character. As the majority of the Bourne formula I felt was done just as well as the other entries, but my problems with the film, and the reason I do partially agree with some of the critics that it's not nearly as good as the first three, has to do with the story. There is a subplot revolving around a new social media platform release that could have been eliminated from about 10 to 12 minutes of this film, which would have tightened it up without losing anything. Since the film is brought to a stuttering halt and removes all the tension from the 3 or 4 times they cut to this subplot, which also has absolutely nothing to do with the story. And B, I didn't feel like the dialogue was quite as engaging or as tightly wound as it was in the previous installments, at times feeling kind of sloppy with lines that were unnecessary or uninteresting or didn't quite seem to fit the tone or the characters' mouths that they were coming from. And lastly, C, the story just felt flat out less compelling than the story being told in the first 3 films. The first 3 were all bent around Bourne discovering who he was, and now that he knows who he is, he simply is uncovering less important, well, slightly less important in my opinion, information regarding his past. This information really is only vital to Bourne in terms of seeking vengeance on a few individuals, which, while it fits with the Bourne formula, but the vengeance here just seems kind of shoehorned in and not nearly as natural or gripping as the stories that we received before. Additionally, the Bourne franchise, particularly the 3 installments directed by Paul Greengrass, have come to be known for their use of shaky cam work. For those of you who do not know, there is handheld cam and then there's shaky cam. Handheld cam is just what it sounds. The cameraman actually is holding the camera. It's not mounted on anything and it's simply being held while filming. Shaky cam does not necessarily mean the camera is being held. It can actually be mounted, but the cameraman is told to literally shake the camera while filming. Typically this is done to mask poor stunt work, poorly choreographed action scenes, and or low budget films. Considering that all the Bourne films, excluding Identity, have been around $100 million or more in their budget, and the stunt work and action sequences are all absolutely stunning, this leads many to question why Greengrass employs this usually despised technique. He does so, in my opinion, to maintain very gritty and realistic scenes within a franchise which always does its best to feel as real as possible. I've always felt that the shaky cam was noticeable but did not detract from the film. I felt it added to the intensity and the adrenaline-inducing scenes. However, in this latest entry, there were scenes where I actually had to look away because the shaky cam was hurting my eyes. Greengrass overdid the shaky cam here, in my opinion. For me, it took away from the film instead of adding to it like his previous efforts. This film was still an absolute blast that I would definitely recommend seeing in theaters, and I would not hesitate to see again. It did not seem to have quite the lasting effect as the first three due to slightly less than spectacular screenplay and overuse of shaky cam. Nevertheless, I awarded a 7.5 out of 10. I had a great time at the theaters with this one, and in the end, having fun and enjoying yourself is what's most important. Thanks for watching. If you like this, please like, subscribe, share, and until next time, my fellow film nerds, keep watching movies.
He has to be put down.
The next bullet's in your head!